Hello, everybody. I have a very special interview today. I'm very happy to be talking to the one and only Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, thank you for being with me. I know you're incredibly busy.
Great to be with you, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
So I want to jump right into it because I honestly could talk to you for probably about 3 hours straight, but I know we have nowhere near that amount of time. So I'll try to be careful here and make sure we don't go over. Um, my first question is the resistance in the Democratic establishment to FDR style social democracy, is that solely ideological, or do you think it's also because of the corrupting influence of money, or do you think it's both things? Do you think that the Democratic establishment actually believes in a neoliberal corporatist vision, or do you think it's because they don't really believe it? They know you're right about stuff, but it's a matter of they're representing their corporate interests, so they can't agree with you even though they want to.
I think it's a combination of factors, but I think money is the most important factor. I mean, it's not an accident that the third way, which is the corporate wing of the Democratic Party, called me and my views an existential threat to the Democratic Party, an existential threat. And I think for the last many, many, many years, many decades, the Democratic Party has essentially been controlled by wealthy campaign contributors, often from Wall Street and other powerful special interests. And I think those are the folks that candidates have looked up to for advice, and who have they've tried to please these people. And what we are trying to do is not only win this election, but to transform the Democratic Party, which is why I'm called an existential threat, to be a party of the working class, of young people, of people who believe in economic justice, social, racial, and environmental justice. So I think it is primarily that you have a party that has been funded by wealthy and powerful special interests, and they want to maintain their position of power.
So would you be willing? So let's say hypothetically, you win. President Bernie Sanders is in the White House. You go to do Medicare for all. Let's be kind to the Democratic Party here and say that only 25% of your Democratic colleagues oppose Medicare for all. Is President Bernie Sanders willing to use the bully pulpit to try to make them fall in line, and even go as far as supporting primary challengers against Democrats who are going to obstruct not only your agenda, but the agenda of the American people?
Absolutely. I've said this a million times. I believe that the agenda that I am fighting for is an agenda supported by the overwhelming majority of working people. And I think if we have the chance to explain what that agenda is, you get even more Republican support than people think possible. Nobody in America, or very few people, think you give tax breaks to billionaires and cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which is exactly the agenda of the Republican Party. Nobody thinks, or I should say very few people think, that climate change is a hoax, which is what the leadership of the Republican Party is about. And in the same sense with the Democratic Party, among Democrats, overwhelming support for a Medicare for all single-payer program, overwhelming support to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, make public colleges and universities tuition-free, cancel all student debt, demand that large corporations and the wealthy stop paying their fair share of taxes. So to answer your question, as President of the United States, what I will fight for is the implementation of that agenda, and I am prepared to go to every state in this union and rally the American people around that agenda to put pressure on their representatives, whether they are Democratic or Republican. And your question is, would I oppose in a primary battle Democrats who are not supportive of that agenda? The answer is absolutely yes.
So when it comes to the issue of executive orders, the mainstream media and Republicans, and even probably many Democrats, their hair will be on fire, and they'll act like you're being, dictatorial or tyrannical or whatever it may be. But can you promise the American people that when it comes to executive orders, wherever constitutionally possible, you will advance your goals and the goals of the American people. So, for example, let's say pardoning and commuting as many nonviolent drug offenders as humanly possible, or an executive order that Trump said he was going to sign, but he didn't end up signing, which is the idea that the federal government can only buy products that are made in America. And that actually means in America, because right now we say, oh, we only buy made in America, but that includes us and all of our allies. So will a President Bernie Sanders use executive orders wherever constitutionally possible in order to advance his agenda and the agenda of the American people?
Absolutely. I mean, why wouldn't I? Of course I would. And let me just say what you can do on the first day, and I promise to do this, is to restore the legal status of the 1.8 million young people who are eligible for DACA. What we can also do is use the executive power of the White House to say to corporations that you have to be good corporate citizens. Don't think that you can line up for very lucrative federal contracts when you're shutting down plants in America and moving abroad, when you're preventing your workers from joining a union, when you are paying your CEOs 300 times more than your employees. You're going to do all that stuff. You're not going to get to the front of the line in terms of a federal contract. So using the ability of the federal government to make sure that our policies support working people, support the environment, rather than just give contracts out to anybody who gets in line, is a very strong executive power that the White House has, and one that I will utilize.
Will you promise to end the Iraq and Afghanistan wars within the first 100 days of your administration?
Well, I don't know that you could end them in the first 100 days, but I think what you can do, and you're talking to somebody who led the opposition to the disastrous war in Iraq, who really kind of understood about what it would mean to the destabilization of that region. What I will promise is that within the first 100 days and sooner than that, we will bring the best minds of this country together, military and non-military, to get our troops out of Iraq and Afghanistan. I can't say that is all going to happen within the first 3 months, but certainly immediately we will begin the planning for that, and that will happen. I am sick and tired of endless wars. You're looking at the only Democratic presidential candidate who has voted against all of Trump's military budgets. I don't think we have to spend 10 times more than the next 10 nations combined on the military, $750 billion a year. I think we have to put more of an emphasis on diplomacy, bringing the world together to try to solve the enormous crises we face, whether it is climate change, terrorism, poverty, etc.
Will President Bernie Sanders promise no new arms deals with human rights violators, including allies like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Israel, etc.?
Well, for a start, you're talking to the guy who led the effort in the Senate to end U.S. intervention, U.S. support of Saudi intervention in the war in Yemen. And that's the first time the War Powers Act has been successfully passed in the Senate, and actually in the House it was vetoed by Trump. I think our foreign policy has got to be a foreign policy which supports democracy, which supports human rights, not a policy like Donald Trump, which is very sympathetic to authoritarian governments all over the world. So we will use the office of White House to expand democracy, expand human rights all over the world.
So the International Court of Justice, which is the top court at the UN, they recently declared that many of the U.S. sanctions against Iran are illegal, specifically the sanctions that are against medicine going into Iran. But the Trump administration totally ignored them and is continuing to sanction that. Would you remove all of the illegal sanctions, not just on Iran, but would you also do it with Venezuela and Cuba?
Well, my inclination is to say yes, but I have to study that a little bit more thoroughly. But let me just tell you this. Excuse me, my throat is not in great shape. I've been giving too many speeches. What we will try to do is forge a new foreign policy, a policy which is even-handed, a policy which is not supportive of vicious and murderous and authoritarian regimes like the one in Saudi Arabia. As I'm sure you know, for many decades now, the United States has seen Saudi Arabia as a very close ally. Well, I don't. I think it is no great mistake, no great misunderstanding, no great, everybody knows that Saudi Arabia is a murderous regime. They do not tolerate democracy. They treat women as third-class citizens. I'm not quite sure why they are our allies. And I think in terms of Saudi Arabia's relationship with Iran, what we have got to do is play an even-handed role and do our best to tell these people that we are not going to be participating or getting involved in never-ending wars. We're going to do our best to negotiate a peaceful relationship, or at least a non-antagonistic relationship with them. And that will be my policy, an even-handed policy between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and end the one-sided relationship that we currently have. Maybe I'm going to be able to take just about one more question because we've got to get going.
Okay, then let me go ahead and jump to our lightning round. I'm gonna mention left-wing policies that I haven't heard you comment on yet. Now, maybe I'm mistaken and you have commented on them, but just give me yes, no, or maybe to these next policies that I'm about to run through. The first one is body cameras on lobbyists during meetings with politicians.
I'm not good at one-word answers. I mean, I think what you want to do is, I don't like one-word answers. And, I think lobbyists have an unbelievable amount of power in Washington and state legislatures. And what we are waging is a political revolution to take power away from corporate America, take power away from their representatives who are the lobbyists, and to have as much transparency as we possibly can.
How about ranked choice voting?
Hello?
Bernie, I'm sorry. Maybe I spoke too fast there. How about ranked choice voting? You there, Bernie?
Ranked voting? Yeah, yes. I am sympathetic. Okay. I am sympathetic to ranked voting. I think it gives people more of a choice in terms of the candidates they are sympathetic to.
Okay, last question. Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
LeBron James.
Is that because of the policy he just supported with you?
Well, actually, that's one of the reasons, yes. I mean, I think LeBron has, been willing to do what a lot of athletes are not, and get involved in the political process, put money into education, and I respect that. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Senator Sanders. I really appreciate it, and good luck on the campaign trail, and I look forward to voting for you in 2020. Okay. Okay, thanks very much, Hal. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.